Hi folks, welcome back. Kim Schofield here with another video on my YouTube channel, and today is week 2 of the Stampotique guest designer spot. This week we are talking about pets, and so I have another art journal layout. It's actually a tag that kind of turned into an art journal layout, and using some adorable cat images for this week's project. So I have a nice little tag here working on a non-stick craft sheet, and I am using those same Dina Wakley stencils from last week's project. And I have, again, some Dina Wakley paint and my brush. And so I'm just going to really wring my brush out, make sure there's no excess water in there before I start. So some tools that you can use to apply paint through a stencil. So don't mind, I had a major blowout there with my paint. I guess I squeezed too hard. So there's a couple of different things that you can use. A brush, a makeup sponge gives you really good coverage. Sometimes a baby wipe. So this is a fun technique using a baby wipe. So all I did was put some paint down onto the tag. And I have a lot of excess paint, as you saw, and so I'm going to clean my brush off on in my art journal, and that'll just be a layer that I'll end up adding later on. You know, I'll add layers on top of that, so that'll just be a first layer. So now I'm putting that stencil down, and now I'm actually using a baby wipe to come in and remove some of the paint. And so this is a really fun way to get some texture without, putting the stencil down on a blank piece of paper and putting ink through the stencil. You're basically putting that paint down first, and you get this really nice coverage, and then removing some of that and getting that design left behind in the paint. So Dina does this a lot in her classes, and I love this. It's just a great way to add some design onto an art journal page or your background on a tag or card. So this didn't work great. I think that the numbers there were a little too small to really get that knockout in the paint. And so all I'm doing is kind of changing. All right, let me go to a little bit larger image, and you'll be able to see that a little bit better. And you can also, doing this with the baby wipe, kind of pull some of that color, further through the stencil, so you get a little bit of that paint as a wash in the background. So now that that paint is dry on my tag, I'm going to go in with archival ink and a blending tool. And the reason I'm using archival is because I'm going over paint. And so if I use something like a distress ink, it's water-based and it's not actually going to, react with anything. It's not going to sit very well on top of the paint. So you'll want to use an archival ink. And I apologize if you hear some noise in the background. We are in the midst of a major snowstorm here in the Northeast, and I thought my husband was done with the plowing, but it sounds like he's still got some going on out there, and he's kind of right outside my window. So hopefully that's not picking anything up. I am using the archival ink and the blending tool to really kind of smush that ink down in the stencil, and this just adds that nice neutral black color that I want to have in the background, just creating another layer. So my tag is done. I'm happy with it, and here I've stamped 2 of the sweet little cat image onto some Nina Solar White cardstock, and I did use Gina K black ink for this. Now, her ink is good for watercolors and Copic markers. So what I'm going to be doing with this image is coloring the background first on one of them, and then I'm going to color the cat on the second. And I have to again apologize for my camera being the wrong way. We're in the midst of moving, and I have some of my stuff packed up, so I'm kind of trying to do this basically on a coffee table instead of at my desk. And apparently, I did not notice these things on the way I had this set up the wrong way. So I apologize for that. It's probably not quite as large. If you expand your screen, that should help some. So usually, hopefully once we get unpacked in the new house, I'll be able to avoid these small little inconsistencies here. So I'm adding just a little bit of shading around the cat using 2 different colors of Copic markers. This is a small image, so it's not like you have a ton of opportunity for tons of shading. But when I get to the cat, you can kind of have some fun just by layering some different colors, maybe adding a few little splotches or stripes like you might see on a cat's fur. And so I'm starting with my lightest color and then going in and darkening that up. And if you're using Copics, some people start from dark and work their way to light. Some go the other way around. I tend to prefer to start lighter. I think probably just because the lighter the color, the easier it is to layer colors on top of it. If you go too dark, it might be more challenging to remove some of that color. I am also working with a colorless blender, and that, if you're familiar with Copic markers, a colorless blender removes color. That's what it does. It doesn't add anything to it, and so I'm using it just if I want to lighten an area. It's great to use the blender, or if you go over the lines or something somewhere and you need to remove a little bit of color. So I really like to use that for really getting a nice blend. It's really great for blending lighter colors and making softer tones. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish coloring my little cat. I'm adding some little rosy cheeks there, because we have a female cat, so she's got rosy cheeks, my little female cat does. And I've kind of used the gray colors that she has. And then I can come in with a white gel pen and add a few little highlights. And it's pretty simple coloring. You could use some watercolors with this, or colored pencils would work really well also. So I did cut out both of those images. The one is just a pretty simple square, and then I cut the cat out and put some foam tape on the back. And this will just allow me to pop up the cat and create a little dimension. I did go back and just color in that cat really quick. I'm not necessarily paying attention to any detail there. This is just so if you're looking at it from the side, you can see the color behind it because it is popped up with the foam tape instead of it being white underneath, which might be a little more stark. And so there, my main image is done. That was super easy to do. And you could do this with anything, any kind of image that you have, but it just gives a little bit of dimension. So I have a circle here that I just use a Spellbinders die to cut out of some kind of book paper. I have kind of some old books that I use for crafting. And I just want to add a little bit of gray to the edges. So this is a regular Distress ink pad and hickory smoke. And I am using a blending tool, and all I'm doing is going around the edges of that circle just to add a little bit of depth to the paper there. And so I'm using some Wendy Vecchi card adhesive, which is awesome. I love this stuff. And that allows me to kind of move this circle around a little bit, but it will dry quickly and adhere onto the tag. And then I'm just cutting that excess off. And that kind of, just gives me a little house, as it were. I think of it as a little house for where my focal image is going to sit. So I did ink up the edge of that just to add make sure that was consistent all around. And now I will add my little kitty cat to that circle. And again, I'm just using some foam tape because I like to have a little bit of dimension on my cards, and pop the cat on there. And next, I did stamp this hysterical sentiment. Oh my gosh. The sentiments on this stamp set is just so much fun and perfect for a cat. It's perfect. I'm sorry I'm late. I didn't really want to come. I just thought that was so funny. So that's just stamped on a plain piece of paper, and then I just cut the words apart, and then I'm just gluing those on individually. And then to finish it off, I thought that my sassy little cat needed to have a little glam. So these are just some iridescent sequins that I'm adding, and these are great for adding a little bit of sparkle, and they'll pick up whatever color is behind them. So they're really pretty. And again, using that Wendy Vecchi adhesive to attach those. That will dry clear, so you won't see that glue at all. I'm a real fan of this adhesive. I don't think I've used it much until I started doing the projects for Stampotique this month, and I'm in love with the stuff. I need to buy like a gallon of the glue. Really good stuff. So I am using a jewel picker to attach those on there. That just has a sticky end and it helps me pick those up. And then I decided that I've got the back of this burlap page that I created last week, and I was kind of digging through some papers that I have that I created at a jelly plate class, and I have this paper and the colors were very similar to my tag, and I thought, hey, this would be great to really quickly and easily turn this into an art journal page. So I cut this down to the size that I wanted. I'm using that Wendy Vecchi glue to attach it onto the burlap, and that'll take a little bit of time to dry. You could put like a heavy book on top of that. I didn't, but you could do that just to make sure that that page is really adhering onto the burlap. But then I'm just going to take my tag and using some foam tape, attach that on to my piece of paper, and presto, I've got an art journal page, like super quick and easy. So that is just about it for me today. And you can't even see that, by the way, through the other side there. You can see my glue is not set yet. That's why you might want to let that dry. But that is about it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Links to my blog and to the Stampotique store are listed here in the credits and also in the description below. Happy crafting!